I'm really enjoying driving this 1991 Cadillac Brougham around that I picked up this past March. And I'm still getting all the odds and ends sorted out. Still working on the transmission issue. The throttle cable adjustment or TV valve adjustment helped a little bit, but didn't quite get rid of all the slipping. And knew that when I got it. And I also knew when I got it that the car is pulling to the right pretty badly. And in doing the transmission and the oil change, I went ahead and inspected the suspension and everything. And I think what's going on is it's got a bad idler arm. And the idler arm is that suspension component on the passenger side that sort of holds up the inner and outer tie rods, just like the pitman arm does on the steering gear on the driver's side. And I'll show you what's going on. What I'm going to do is try to rotate the wheel. I've got the steering wheel locked. I'm going to try to rotate the wheel left and right to test for play. I've already rotated it top and bottom to check for wheel bearing play, which they do need adjustment, but it's not way out of whack. I just wanted to do that to make sure that any play in the suspension is separated from wheel bearing play versus suspension play, trying to isolate where the play is. So what I'll do is rotate it in this direction and try to show you guys exactly where this play is. If I can get the camera angled up properly. And what you want to do is look for upwards and downward motion. You've got the steering shock absorber here and the inner and outer tie rods. You want to look for motion up and down as I try to turn the wheel, and pay particular attention to this area right here where the end of the idler arm is. So hopefully you guys could see that. It's actually way out of hand. There's a lot of play in this thing. And here's the idler arm. Just has 2 bolts to the frame and 1 bolt to the steering system center link, which goes all the way to the pitman arm here. And you can actually move this thing up and down by hand. I don't know if you saw that, but it's loose right in this area here. I did go ahead and grease all the Zerk fittings. One thing I'm impressed about with these older GM vehicles is that everything has grease fittings on them instead of the lube for life. So you got grease fittings on the lower ball joints and outer tie rods and everything else, but it looks like this just went ahead and failed due to old age. So I'm going to go ahead and see if I can get this thing out of here. It's not too involved. The difficult part is going to be separating these 2 pieces here. So you just take off this bolt and tap around the sides of it to loosen up the mechanical lock there, and hopefully it'll just come on out. And then of course loosen the 2 bolts up here, securing it to the frame. And if that doesn't work, what we can do is always go with the pickle fork option, but that'll be my last resort because that tends to tear up the seals a lot. So I'm going to go ahead and play around with it, see how tight it is, and see if I can get that off of here. Well, about 15 minutes later, I'm happy to report the parts got busted loose, and I did not have to use the good old pickle fork as a last resort. What I ended up doing is using a combination of a large hammer and this rod, and I was able to drive it out by pounding on the center bolt coming through instead of using the pickle fork. Kind of an unconventional way to do it, but the pickle fork works most of the time, but as you can see, there's a rubber seal around here that would definitely, they always get chewed up with the pickle fork, and then you've ruined your center link. And that's probably not going to be a readily available item anymore on this particular car. It's pretty old. So finding a way to get these two pieces separated without damaging that seal is crucial. It's still in pretty good shape, nice and supple, no tears. And now the job is, that was the most difficult part of the job. Everything else is going to be a piece of cake. I just have to loosen these two bolts up here. And by the way, I found this one just already loose. It's kind of snug by hand, but you can see it's already loose, so glad I found out about this. And now that the parts are free, you can kind of see all the play in here, hopefully. So now it's just a matter of taking out these two bolts and we'll get the new part in. Okay, here's the new part. I just ran up to Napa and got the best that they had. I think this is made by TRW and made in the USA, which is really nice to see. A lot of stuff's made in China, Taiwan these days. And it comes with a parts kit, and most of these parts you're not going to need for a 1991 Cadillac Brougham. Some of the previous years, the much older vehicles had a smaller diameter bolt that bolted to the frame that you would need to use spacers for. These spacers won't fit on these larger bolts on the newer models, so you don't need these. And you also do not need the cotter pin because the tapered stud on the center link doesn't have a hole to lock it down. This nut here is actually a tapered nut, so it's kind of normal on that side and tapered on this one. So as you screw it down, it's going to have a locking function. So pretty much, these are the only parts we need. It is greasable, so what we got to do before we do anything else is go ahead and screw the Zerk fitting in here and tighten that on down, and we'll be ready to go into the car with it. Okay, everything is installed and mounted nice and tight, as well as greased up properly with the built-in Zerk fitting. And it's kind of shiny because I sprayed an anti-corrosive spray on there that's going to prevent it from rusting out and causing problems. So that job wasn't too bad. Most difficult part was separating the two pieces here. And I found out why that upper bolt there was loose to begin with. And turns out the reason is it was completely stripped, pretty badly stripped. So that's in pretty bad shape. It's interesting some of the things that you find out while working on an old car like that. So this bolt was ruined, and I just went ahead and reused the original bolt for the tapered thread there, and then used the new bolt with the kit for the tapered thread on the mounting stud right there. They're actually the same size, and you know, automotive quality type bolts. So everything is all nice and tight. And now to do the same test that I did before, and we'll see if it's any tighter. So hopefully you guys saw that. There was just a little bit of movement there, and I had to try a lot harder. I had to use a lot more force on that wheel to get the suspension to move a little bit. So I think that's a good fix. I'm going to go ahead and drive the car and see if my pulling problem, where it pulled to the right, is corrected. And if not, I can go ahead and have it aligned, knowing that everything on the suspension is now back in the tolerance. So this wasn't too bad of a job. It took about maybe 45 minutes. And that's what the old part looks like. It's not terribly hard to get out. And at least from Napa, the part is about $40. So not really a whole lot of money or a whole lot of time to get this classic American car driving like it should be.